Smile. I have Old Rip Van Winkle, 10-year-old, 53.5%. Hi, WhiskyJason here. Whiskey from the viewpoint of American in Germany, and today, see my smile, I have Old Rip Van Winkle, 10-year-old, 53.5%. Now, there's the hype about Pappy. I'm going to actually do videos here on the 10-year-old, the 12-year-old, the 13-year-old rye from Van Winkle, the 15-year-old Pappy, and the 20-year-old Pappy. Unfortunately, I have not yet had the opportunity to get a sample of the 23-year-old Pappy. If anyone out there wants to donate or even sell 2 CLs or whatever of the 23, WhiskyJason@gmail.com. I'm sure we can find a way. Now, let's put this in here so it has a little bit of time to develop in the glass. This was not originally all the way full. I only had 3 CLs at the beginning. I've already done the German video. Now I'm doing the English video. So, a little bit about the history at the very beginning. I'm sorry. If you don't want to see this, just skip about 5 or 6 minutes ahead. It's going to be about 5 minutes before I finish talking about Van Winkle and come to the tasting. Julian Pappy Van Winkle was a salesman at W.L. Weller's and Son. They were just basically a wholesaler. They bought barrels of whiskey, did not distill themselves, and they sold their bottles. All right, so he started off as a salesman, worked his way all the way up to the president. Now, there was a merger between W.L. Weller's and the Stiller's Distillery right before Prohibition happened in Kentucky. Stiller, luckily had a permit to sell medicinal whiskey during Prohibition. So, Julian Van Winkle was the president. His best friend that he went into business with, Alex Farmsley, was his vice president. And Mr. Stiller was responsible for the finances, Department of Accounting and Finances. And somehow they made it all the way through Prohibition. If my information is correct, they were not allowed to distill during Prohibition, but they were able to sell the whiskey they already had on stock and were able to buy from other people and also sell that. So, when Prohibition stopped, they built a new distillery, the so-called Stitzler Willer Distillery in Shively, Kentucky. And, Pappy was actually the president until his death when he was almost, I think, 90 years old. His son, Julian Van Winkle Jr., took over, and in 1964, the distillery, Stitzler Weller, stopped distilling because there was actually a depression within the whiskey industry. A lot of different distilleries died and died out because no one wanted to drink whiskey. Vodka was the new thing. Beer was the new thing. Bourbon was for the father, the grandfather. We want to revolt. We want to be this generation of 1968, and it was different. Jack Daniels managed to survive becoming with their bad boy image. But all the rest, for example, wow, I really have a blackout with all the different names. Rebel Yell, and I want to say Old Forester, but that's not right. I forgot. Okay, don't worry. They actually had to sell the distillery in 1972. Now, Julian Van Winkle didn't want to get out of the whiskey business, so what did he do? He hired a secretary, he had an office, and he started actually selling whiskey again. He sold decanters to the different universities and colleges around the nation. So there would be in the different decanters, different ceramic type of shapes, and he would sell to the university and fill it up with whiskey. That was absolutely the in thing to do in the 70s. Now, he also started buying barrels of whiskey from, first of all, Old Bone. We'll hear more about that when I talk about the 20-year-old, Pappy Van Winkle, but mainly from Stitzler Weller Distillery. because he had the dream that one day his son, Julian III, would be able to sell that whiskey under the name Old Rip Van Winkle. So when they sold the distillery in 1972, they sold all the brand names as well except for one. Old Rip Van Winkle. They did not produce any whiskey with the name Old Rip Van Winkle after Prohibition. It was only pre-Prohibition, and therefore the company said, hey, there's no brand here. You can keep the name. Well, they kept it, and they started using it. And then 70s and basically in the 80s, they actually started producing something. Julian III, his father died 1982 when he was 32 years old. Had his barrels stored at the old Hoffman Distillery in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. And so in 1983, when this distillery also went bankrupt, he had to buy it. And there's stories and stories about how Julian III shoveled mud after there was floods, how things were always breaking down, and every last penny he invested into the bottling line so that he could actually produce these bottles. And they weren't of the best, they weren't well renowned yet. But then Preston, the fourth generation, took over 2008, the Old Rip Van Winkle Distillery. I love it when they have the word distillery, even though they don't distill. And so we had all that stock from 1972, which was running low. And they had the idea, hey, we need to work with someone who does wheated bourbon. Well, Buffalo Trace, Weller, almost the same recipe. And so starting in 2002, they actually had a agreement to produce exactly according to the Pappy recipe, Pappy whiskey. So now we have the Old Rip Van Winkle, the brand name, 10-year-old, produce at Buffalo Trace, 53.5%. Basically almost the same as W.L. Weller, 107, 53.5%. So it's not barrel proof, but what they did is they just took it out of the barrel, put a little bit of water in there, a little bit of the limestone water that they talk about, and they bottled up and sold it. So one last thing before I nose it. The recommended price at the liquor store is $59. The secondary price on the secondary market is $550 for this bottle. Unbelievable. Old Rip Van Winkle produces 50,000 or 48,000 bottles a year. That's it for the entire world. For Germany, for Japan, for the States. That is not enough. We have a problem with supply and demand. There's more demand than the supply. There's hype. And of course, prices go through the roof. And everyone talks about it. You can hear Preston and also Julian III talk about how they never advertised Pappy. Never. But yet everyone in the whiskey world knows about it. It's almost like a Ferrari. Have you ever seen a Ferrari commercial? I haven't. But everyone knows what a Ferrari is. Ta-da! Because it's so exclusive. It's the unicorn. It's absolutely almost out of our reach. So who's going to pay 500 euros for $500 for a dumb bottle like this? Well, I did pay a lot of money to get this tiny little sample. And I really must say, it was almost worth it. So, let's nose it. Oh, I forgot to mention, by 2025, they're going to expand their supply all the way up to 100,000 bottles. So 10 years, doubling production. It's still not going to be enough. And in 2015, there was all this hype about Buffalo Trace saying, ooh, the Angels took more than their share. There's going to be less on the market than before. And what happened? The secondary market price went up another 50%. Pappy craziness in October, November is just unbelievable. All right, on the nose. Ooh, cinnamon bun. It's so much cinnamon. Cinnamon bun, the doughiness of the cinnamon is there. A lot of nice, sweet wood. So none of the spiciness of the rye. It's a wheater. That's a whiskey I could just smell and sniff for the next 25, 30 minutes. It's so good. The color's great as well. So, I'm sure you can see this anyways, but I just wanted to show that. Very, very nice. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, I'm also going to do a poor man's Pappy. 2 different versions at the end. I'm going to compare it with something. Maybe this, maybe something else. Probably the lot 12. The lot B 12-year-old. Cinnamon, 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 cinnamon. Hot. 53.5%. A little bit of water. I hope I got it around 46, 48%. I think 46 is always like the sweet spot with me. Oh, it's good. I still have the cinnamon on my tongue. I'm going to have a conspiracy theory. I think they dumped some cinnamon just into the bottle. Fireball. Fireball is the cheap version of the 10-year-old Old Rip Van Winkle. The picture on the bottle is not the typical Pappy. You get that with a 20-year-old, a 23-year-old, and with a 15-year-old where he's smoking the cigar. This is really not the Pappy. This is the Van Winkle edition. So, ooh, much better. Oh, even more cinnamon. I like. I remember I tasted the W.L. Weller, not on the camera, not in German. I did in German, not in English. And I think the Antique is what I liked a little bit better than the 107, but I think I just confused something again. I'm still learning. I'm sorry. Very good. Yep, I did hit the sweet spot. Very, very good. A minus. Ooh, I hope it goes up. I hope the 20-year-old's really an A plus. That's supposed to be the best of all of them. It's just so good. Is it a €500 or $500 bottle? No, but it is a $100 bottle whiskey. I could pay $100 for this and say, nah, yep. 200, no. 500, never. But to sample it, to try it, to do a video about it, to say, yay, I finally tasted my Pappy, that is an experience, that is a privilege, and I'm very, very thankful for my friend that arranged for me to have this, and also the other friends that arranged to give me the other samples, sell me the other samples, I must admit. I want to savor the last little drop. Wait a second. Very good. Very, very good. Now, value for money, as I said, if you can find it for $59 and you're in the lottery, buy it, buy it, buy it. Open it up, try it. My personal opinion is almost always whiskey's there to drink. It's not there to be a product that you collect and you deal with. My personal opinion. I think we should drink the bourbons they make. They're made to be enjoyed, and that's what I want to do. Thank you very much for watching. Old Rip Van Winkle, 10-year-old, was an A minus. What's going to happen with the Van Winkle 12 Lot B? I have the new label, the old label, and a 1980 version. What about the rye, 13-year-old? What about the 15-year-old? What about the 20-year-old? And I'm still looking for the 23. Hi, maybe you have something for me. All right, all the best. See you soon. WhiskyJason here. Bye-bye.